Protestantism began in the 16th century as a reaction to the medieval church practices such as indulgence. Before that, the church was so powerful that they thought it was untouchable, not until a man named Martin Luther began to think critically.
Martin Luther was born on November 10, 1483 in Eisleben, Saxony, Germany, to Hans Luther, whom was an ore miner, and Margaret Luther. At 7, he entered school in Mansfeld, then moved to Magdeburg in 1498 at 15 years old. He went back to Eisleben to continue studies. 2 years later, he entered University of Erfurt, where he received a degree in grammar, logic, and rhetoric, in which he initially used for aspiration to become a lawyer. However, in 1505, he changed his ideals by deciding to be a monk instead. His first years inside the monastery was difficult for him since he could not find religious enlightenment. At 27, he was given a chance to become a delegate to Catholic Church but was discouraged due to the immorality and corruption by the priests. Upon returning to Germany, he enrolled in the University of Wittenberg for a doctorate degree in theology, where he studied scriptures for enlightenment. It was then in 1519 when he declared that the Pope wasn't given any authority to interpret the scriptures, which was a direct attack to the papacy. By December 10, 1520, the Pope issued a letter, only which had Luther burnt. In January 1521, he was officially excommunicated from the Roman Catholic Church. 4 months later, the Edict of Worms declared him a convicted heretic, which made him condemned and wanted. Because of this, he hid in Wittenberg Castle Church with the help of his friends. A year later, he began Lutheranism, which gained supporters in German Greece. By 1525, he married Katharina von Bora, who was a former nun and had 6 children. Starting 1533, he became the Dean of Theology at the University of Wittenberg until February 8, 1946, when Luther died at the age of 62 due to stroke.
Let's not limit Luther as just an ordinary figure in history. His ideas, just as written in his 95 Theses, were very important in establishing another denomination in Christianity, a movement wherein salvation and your personal relationship with God is personal, not institutional.
The world of the late medieval Roman Catholic Church, from which the 16th century reformers emerged, was a complex one. Over the centuries, the Church, particularly in the office of the papacy, had become deeply involved in the political life of the Western Europe. The resulting intrigues and political manipulations, combined with the Church's increasing power and wealth, contributed to the bankruptcy of the Church as a spiritual force. Abuses such as the sale of indulgences or spiritual privileges by the clergy, priests, pastors, or the body of people who are ordained for religious duties, or other charges of corruption undermine the Church's spiritual authority. That is why they argued for religious and political redistribution of power into the hands of the Bible and pamphlet-reading pastors and princes. The key ideas of the Reformation is a call to purify the Church and a belief that the Bible, not tradition, should be the sole source of spiritual authority, were not themselves novel. It has made the Church reassess their own principles and made the Church not untouchable. These ideas were purveyed by utilizing the power of printing press that has skillfully used by Luther and other reformers who speared their ideas in wide audience by assisting the layman's translation of the Bible. Translation helps in the Reformation since the Bible was once only available in Latin, which means that the Bible is only available to priests and monks. Luther helped reach the Bible to the commoners by translating it to German. In 1520, the Treatise on Good Deeds presented salvation through grace and considered faith as the only good deed. Faith persuaded the believer to act within the church and in society, thus he or she was released from looking for salvation through deeds. The Renaissance helped in the Reformation through the teachings of the individualism, such that a person's relationship with God is personal and not institutional. Consequently, people did not need the intercession of the church or its priests in order to receive God's forgiveness. Neither was God's forgiveness dependent on the buying of indulgences from the church. He meant that priests had no preferential position in relation to God. Man received free redemption through faith alone. Only through the grace of God could mankind be justified, he believed. For the wages of sin is death. This was the product of Martin Luther's endeavor to retrace Christianity back to the source, which is the biblical teachings. The 95 Thesis was a protest against the Pope's sale of reprieves for penance and indulgences. Martin Luther was committed to the idea that salvation could only be reached through faith and divine grace only. On his belief on salvation, he wrote The Disputation of the Power and Efficacy of Indulgences, or the 95 Theses. It is a lost of questions and propositions for debate. In October 31, 1517, Martin Luther defiantly nailed a copy of his 95 Theses on the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church. It was to announce that the ensuing of the academic discussion around it that he was organizing. The 95 Theses later became the foundation of the Protestant Reformation. It was written in a humble and academic tone, questioning rather than accusing. The first two theses was Luther's central idea, which was that God intended believers to seek repentance and faith alone would lead to salvation. The other 93 theses, most of it criticizes the practice of indulgences. A part of this is the sentiment about the St. Peter's scandal. Why does not the Pope, whose wealth today is greater than the wealth of the richest Crassus, build the Basilica of St. Peter with his own money rather than with the money of the poor believers? The 95 Theses were distributed throughout Germany and quickly made their way to Rome. In 1518, Luther was summoned to a city in southern Germany, Augsburg. He was called to defend his opinions before an imperial diet or assembly. The debate between Luther and the Cardinal Thomas Cajetan lasted for 3 days. In the end, Cardinal Thomas Cajetan defended the Church's use of indulgences, but Luther refused to recant and return to Wittenberg.
Change is inevitable. The world has changed after the Reformation. Currently, there are 800 million Protestant members around the globe, comprising 37% of the global Christian population.
There are 47,000 denominations under Protestantism, and 80 the Catholics.
The movement, which is the second largest Christian denomination in the world, has made the Church realize its flaws and made the Catholic Church itself open to changes.